Denver in Rhode Island.
Hi, how are you guys doing?
Okay.
Pretty good. How are you?
Good. I'm a Catholic, and I just had a question for you guys. I don't know how long I'm going to be on the phone since I have bad connection, but I'll try to get it out if I can. My question is, do you think that their religion has done any good things in the world, like impacted people's beliefs? Like, for example, Martin Luther King, when he was for helping civil rights, like he was very influenced by his religion to help people get civil rights.
I can save you some time here, Denver. We get this question a lot, and mainly. Oh, hold on. There's an echo.
Did we lose him? Denver, you still there?
Hello?
No, that's too bad.
Well, I can answer him offline. Generally, the statement that I would put forward based on your question would be something akin to people will do good things and have good tendencies and good instincts. A person who is in an oppressed community, I think, is going to be very concerned with, for example, equality and justice on that level. The idea that they have a religion as part of their worldview, of course they're going to gear that toward what they already believe and what they'd like to accomplish. I don't think that the religion should take credit for what people are doing that they would do otherwise. So, for example, there are plenty of people that oppose slavery and racism who are not believers, and those people do so because they understand why it should be opposed. So the religion sort of takes credit for things that good people do. I don't think that the religion makes them do it. I think that the people are using the religion as a mechanism to do it. And in some ways, that is a good thing because historically, religion has come in and, I guess, pulled people together and given them like a social construct where they could come together as a group and do things interdependently, which always makes people more productive. But I do think that that could be achieved as well without the woo, without the supernatural beliefs. I think that you could just have a community sort of situation where everyone comes together and does good things, and they don't need to have any sort of supernatural things attached to it. It's almost like the story of the stone soup, where, if you're not familiar with it, a guy comes into town and he has a magic rock. He picks up the rock before he comes into town, and he comes in and he says the rock is magic, and you throw it in a pot and it makes the best soup you've ever had. And so the townspeople are laughing and mocking, but he's swearing on the rock, and so they get this big pot of water and they start boiling. He throws the rock in. And as time goes on and people are drinking and laughing, and he's saying things like, it gets really better if you put an onion in there. And so people bring onions, and they're like chopping up the onions, and he's like, yeah, and some potatoes really helps it out as well. Ultimately, they end up making like a pot of soup. And everybody has a big pot of soup, the whole town, and they're all happy, and they all ate well, and they drank, and they had a good story from this guy, and he leaves, and everyone's, happy about the story about the rock. But the point is, the stone didn't make the soup, the people made the soup. And it would be really wrong to credit the stone. So I feel that religion takes credit for a lot of good things that people do. And I think when people feel desperate and they, for example, come through something and they pray for help or inspiration, and they see that as getting them through, what I really see there is somebody who got themselves through it, but they were robbed of the credit for having done what they did by a religion that tells them they have to not take credit and they need to thank God. And I don't think that this God model should be stealing the credit for people who have seen themselves through a tough time or seen themselves through things. The fact that they're there and they did it means that they can do it.
I do want to add some stuff. Our main objection to religion is that it encourages people to believe things that aren't true, or at least believe things that they don't have any reason to think are true. And sometimes the things that they think turn out to be nice and productive things. And like in Martin Luther King's case, I would not dismiss the fact that Martin Luther King was a great fighter for civil rights, and that he felt inspired by his interpretation of religion as one of the driving forces in his life. On the flip side, you have a lot of guys in like the 17th, 18th, 19th centuries who believed very strongly that what they read in the Bible plainly said it was okay to own slaves. and even good for the slaves in some cases. And you would find long treatises justifying the Southern practice of slavery by pulling up certain Bible quotes. And a lot of, and not only anti-abolitionists, but also anti-civil rights leaders like the Ku Klux Klan was also very, very driven by their religion. Now, I'm not blaming the religion for their actions any more than I'm crediting the religion for the actions of Martin Luther King. I think that religion, you asked if religion actually does any good things. I think that religion does some things like, in particular, organize people. People have built beautiful cathedrals because of churches, because in the Middle Ages, the churches had all the money. And they were able to rake in piles of money from people. And as a side effect, they built beautiful works of art because they figured those were tributes to God. The fact that we disagree with the basis of the religion doesn't dismiss the fact that maybe those cathedrals wouldn't have been built, and maybe these incredible masses by talented composers might not have been written without that sort of inspiration.
But maybe some people would have been fed.
Right, yeah. So, I mean, our position is not religion is an unmitigated disaster and does only bad things in the world. It's just that, like Tracie said, it's not really necessary, and I think in some ways it's ethically neutral, or would be if it weren't for the fact that it encourages people to believe things that they can't possibly know are true, which I don't think is a virtue in any way.
Yeah. And on the flip side, I have seen people struggle with things that they know are not correct. So there will be somebody who thinks that, like the anti-gay stance is wrong, and they struggle with that, but they're in the church and they believe when they're reading the Bible that it's telling them that homosexuality is, an abomination. And so they struggle to make themselves agree with it, make themselves believe it, even though internally they know that that's not correct. So
right.
It has that impact where people will subjugate themselves to it, and sometimes that can be really harmful when they're subjugating to something that's wrong.
Mm-hmm.